Good morning, my friends. Today, it's a beautiful day. Not a cloud in the sky, all sunny. Not sure how cold or warm it is, but I remember last night it was pretty cold. I was walking outside. I think it went down to something like 1 degree or something like that. Very cold. Apparently, it snowed yesterday too, which I didn't realize at the time because I was inside. So today, normally I do a book review on Fridays, but today I figured I'd do something a little different. I'll do a movie review instead. I watched a movie last night before I went to bed, and that movie was Office Space. If any of you have ever seen it, it's a comedy film that takes place in the late 90s, roughly at this very typical corporate office space in I don't know, just a very generic, Middletown, America. And it's first of all, I think the depth of this film is very much understood. It's sort of, people sort of watch it as just a general light comedy with some deeper tones to it, but this is actually probably one of the most profound comedy films I have ever watched in my life. I've seen it numerous times, but last night I rewatched it again and sort of had another realization as to the depth of this film. If any of you are familiar with Taoism, this is probably the film that would sort of be a representation fully of that philosophy or religion or whatever you want to call it. And basically the basic plot line is you have a main character called Peter Gibbons who is working at this office space called Initech, which is this very vague sounding corporate place where he has to do software programming, and he basically hates his job, he hates his life, he's miserable, and he goes to see a hypnotherapist. Pretty much zonks him out, and when he zonks him, the hypnotist eventually dies in the middle of their therapy session. Peter Gibbons leaves feeling refreshed and feeling like a completely new person. He has absolutely no cares in the world, right? He just doesn't want to do anything. He was supposed to come into work on the weekend, and he decides, fuck it, I'm not going to, because he doesn't want to. And it's sort of, I don't want to give any more spoilers, but it basically ties into this whole theme. That basically he stops trying or stops caring about doing something he hates or stops doing something based off of his fear of losing his job, and it ends up serving him to his benefit. And there's a lot of morals to this movie that sort of points into a very Buddhist or Taoist philosophy, and it's very interesting film in that regard. There's not really much I can say about it because it's I wouldn't be able to talk about it without spoiling the film. However, I would definitely give it a recommendation to watch just because of how in depth it is at that point. I'm sorry, I'm losing my track of thought here, but the main element of this film really is the concept of doing nothing, right? It's the concept of non-doing, which I've talked about several times in my other videos. You have a scene where he sort of goes about and they go for lunch at this restaurant, and he sees this waitress that he's attracted to. This is before the hypnosis part, and they say, why don't you just go ask her out? And he's like, oh no, because I'm just another customer, I don't really feel like it, it's kind of weird, etc. And then once he has the hypnosis, he just kind of walks in and just boldly asks her out, but he doesn't do it in a way that's assertive. He just says, hey, if you want to have lunch with me next door, you can come, and if not, that's also cool. And then he leaves, and then eventually they end up dating, and then they have a romantic relationship. And that's sort of the concept of non-doing that I've talked about, is that he is doing something to ask her out, but he's not doing it in a way where he's enforcing it or he's forcing it or being demanding this. of her. He's just, opening himself up to the possibility, right? He's seeing an opportunity and rolling with it. And if the opportunity takes hold, then great. And if not, then that's great too. Before the hypnotherapist, he is consciously not making an effort to go after this woman. And in a way, he is not performing the action of non-doing. He is actually doing something. He is restricting himself. He's forcing himself to not go after someone that he wants, right? And this is also a part of that philosophy that I think people need to understand. If you're familiar with Tao Te Ching or any Buddhist film, and you want something that's a little bit more present with reality or present with current times, or something that you can relate to, Office Space is probably the best one you can find in that realm, right? So again, there's other things that happen in this film that sort of it all ties together, right? They get in trouble at one point because he ends up becoming a lot more moralistic. He wants to do something that's a big moral thing, and it ends up biting him in the ass in the end, and he realizes that it wasn't the best way to go about things, which is again another thing that I've also talked about in terms of being moralistic, of trying to be good and doing the right thing in a very dramatic and radical kind of way. It always ends up coming back to you, and it ends up not really being a good thing in the end. It ends up being something that's puts people's lives at risk, their well-being at risk. It puts everything at risk, and that's a problem that I find with a lot of people who are on this morality high, right? They feel like they have the sense of urgency to do the right thing, and it's destructive mentality. It's a forceful mentality. It's not an act of non-doing. It's not an act of going with the flow, which I think is in a religious term, it's trusting God's path, or whatever you want to call it. But that's the way to go. If you follow through with how the world is working, and you don't force your way onto it, you don't force anything to happen, you don't force your perceived morality into the world, everything will be fine. You just have to see opportunities that are right there, and you realize that these opportunities are not going to affect other people in a negative way, regardless of who they are, and you just go with it, you flow within it. You're not taking anything that's substantial risk in the regard that it's harmful for everyone. Then it's what you should do. That's the concept of non-doing, which I've emphasized a lot in this video. So this movie is very in-depth. There's probably some deconstructed reviews of this on YouTube, and if not, then there definitely should be, because this is probably one of the most profound comedies of all time, and I would strongly say that this isn't something that I'm half-ass saying ironically. I say this with full intent. Office Space is the most profound comedy that I've ever watched, and I've watched a handful of movies. I won't say it's the most profound movie in general, just in terms of the late night stoner comedy type of film. It's definitely number one in terms of that realm. Dramas, obviously, there's a lot more profound dramas that exist in the world, but dramas are that's what their goal is. Comedies don't really try to do that. They try to just go for laughs, and everything's very light. But this is it manages to be light and relaxing, but it's also very profound in the same way, which is why I really love this movie. It sort of has everything you sort of want. So anyway, definitely would recommend it, and if you have the time to check it out, definitely should. Anyway, hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.